We're back here on the platform, and we are having a conversation with DJ Counsellor, who is now a youth pastor in Salem Union Baptist Church. He has found his way back to the Baptist faith after being out for a little while. Congratulations to you. You deserve to be warmly congratulated. And Don Cartwright, who is here today. Christianity, what it is. What is it, really? And I ask the question because we in the Bahamas like to say that we are a Christian nation. Cartwright and DJ Counsellor, how can you be Christian in a small society like this with the amount of social degradation, with the amount of... There are many criminal enterprises that are operating in this small society. Just imagine, at the beginning of 2015, we can say with almost certainty that we will have over 100 homicides.
Yes, sir.
You can say that, because that is a sensible conclusion that somebody would arrive at. How can you call yourself a Christian nation when such is the commentary?
Christian nation, Dr. Jones, based on my understanding of it, is that we are a nation that was built on basic Christian principles. Love your neighbor. Be kind to who is next to you. Show godly concern about those who are oppressed, those who are depressed, those who are marginalized. That's what Christianity, according to Jesus Christ, was simply this. He said, they'll know that you are my disciples by your love. And Jesus Christ even foretold of those who would be before him, saying that I prophesied in your name, I did all this in your name. But Jesus said, I never knew you. See, Christianity is all about, like DJ Counsellor would have said earlier, love. And when we talk about being a Christian nation, I believe that even though there are elements in our nation that are not necessarily Christ-like, I would still say that we are a Christian nation based on our founding principles.
Yeah, but you can. So Lyndon used to say, paper will stand still and you can write anything on it, right? And we've written the preamble to our Constitution that our Constitution is based on Christian principles, or the nation is based on Christian principles and the rule of law. That is an ideal.
Correct.
That is not the reality. The reality in the Bahamas today is that we are a secular society. When you talk about the unchurched, when you talk about whether or not the church is relevant to young people, when you're talking about whether these youth groups are compelling and you are able to get people to come to these youth groups, these Christian youth groups, or when you're talking about whether or not Sunday school as we knew it are well attended. When we stop keeping evening worship services in many of the churches, when we are going away, straying away from those things, how can we say that we are a Christian nation? Aren't we more honest if we say that we are secular? That we want to be Christian, but right now we are secular, and we ought to be working on really being a Christian nation?
Well, I mean, with our forefathers put in our Constitution that we are a Christian nation.
No. The nation, the preamble to the Constitution talks about Christian principles.
Right.
But that does not mean that we are a Christian nation.
No, we
have 4,000 or 5,000 churches.
Yes, sir. Strong and growing.
Yes. But look at the level of social decay. Look at the number of murders that you have every few days. There are only 365 days in the year, right? And you have 121 homicides. Or just do the math.
Yeah.
We have a violent culture, a culture of violence, where even Christian people are talking about violence and want violence. A young lady asked me the other day about whether or not I have a gun. Oh. And people are arming themselves. They want guns. That is what Christians do, arm themselves with guns. Is that what they do? You say you're a Christian, but you want your gun under your pillow? Rather than having your Bible on your pillow? You want a gun under your pillow? A gun can only do one thing, right?
You could hunt.
Yes, sir.
You could hunt. On your gun license, I can guarantee you won't say protection. It will say hunting. So, you know.
Yeah, but let's talk about that, and I'm serious about this Christianity and whether or not we are real Christian witnesses in the Bahamas, and whether it is pervasive in the country.
Go ahead. Mr. Jones, the whole country is not, of course you know that, the whole country is not, we do have a lot of believers out there, we do have a lot of churches out there under.
We have people who like church.
Yeah, no, we have some folks out there doing ministry.
We have a church attendance and people who like going to church.
We have a big church attendance that doing ministry. Yes, sir. That's what it is. It's a social gathering. But there's some out there who in the trenches, sir. There are some in the trenches.
I'm not denying that.
So we can't say all.
No one is suggesting that all. We know that we do have many practicing Christians in our country.
Yes.
Thousands of practicing Christians. But whether or not we can say that as a result of that this is a Christian nation is another thought.
I still feel that we still are a Christian nation, sir. I do.
Okay.
We've strayed from where we were 30 years ago, but all is not lost. And if it wasn't for some of our praying grandmothers and some folks that are still in the trenches now, we'd be further away than where we are right now. And so there's a lot more that we can do. And I think 2015 is going. Some young folks are waking up, and it's going to shake. It's going to be a shaking at the church because some of our leaders are going to be offended because some things going to have to be done, and it's not going to be done the traditional way. I think God is raising a new remnant of leaders that's going to be evident not just in the church, but in every aspect of our communities, from government sector, private sector. And this nation, we're going to do all that we can do.
You feel safe in this country?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I understand folks are now becoming more armed because of the many home invasions that are happening that are even not being recorded. Not being broadcast on a daily basis. Yeah, it's a funny situation. But I think a man has a right to protect his home. Because we're dealing with a different breed here. In the 80s and 90s, just saying me and Minister Cartwright was having a war.
So you're advocating a gun?
No, I'm not advocating a gun.
But
I cannot speak out against a man having a gun.
What are you saying then? How do you protect your home?
How do you protect your home?
Yeah.
You have to use whatever means to protect your home. If someone is bringing harm to your children or to your wife.
No. As it stands now.
Okay, me personally,
yeah.
I don't like guns. Because once you pull the trigger, we have a problem.
But you believe you should have one?
I didn't say I believe you should have one, but I don't have nothing wrong with a man having a gun. A licensed gun. A sensible thinking man, because guns is not the problem. It's the silly people behind the guns are the problem. I have knives. I'm not going around jacking up anybody. And I'm sure if I had a licensed firearm, I wouldn't go around shooting anybody either.
Why would you want a licensed firearm? You're not a hunter. You don't. We have a whole lot of people who go to the authorities and say that they want guns for hunting, and they know that they do not hunt.
Well, if
they know that they aren't, they don't go looking for birds or looking for wild ducks or whatever. They know that they don't do
Not
it.
all, though. I have some of my Christian brothers who have guns and they go hunting. And if I get a gun, Mr. Jones, I'm going hunting, going in Nagua, and I'm going to shoot some wild hog.
DJ Counsellor.
Yes, sir.
In New Providence, there are a whole lot of people who want guns for self-protection.
Yes, sir. Can you blame them?
Yeah.
Mr. Jones, I would let me, if I could put a peg here. I too am of the view that I don't have an issue with a man having a licensed firearm to protect his family. I am so sorry, but if a man comes into my house with a gun, I cannot throw a Bible at him and expect to protect my family. And so there are persons who feel that these guns, based on how society is, they feel that the gun is there to protect them from persons who have other intentions coming into their home. And so I'd even say, even if a Christian has a gun, I don't necessarily have an issue with that. And that is my honest opinion dealing with it, because the man is called to be a priest, a provider, and a protector. He is responsible for protecting his household. And so there are things that having a Bible under your pillow will not do. When Nehemiah was building the wall, he told the man, grab your sword, and he told him to grab your hammer. So while you're working, if the enemy comes and approaches you, you have your sword in your hand. And so while we are Christians, we can't be naive from protecting ourselves. If you have an issue with a gun, get a security system on the house to know when persons are coming in, do whatever you have to do. But persons should be able to protect themselves.
Security system will work, right?
It just lets you know that someone is coming in.
Security system
Yeah, it gets you up so you can maybe lock a door to, you know.
It would call the
I can say
police.
this though, you know, just for folks
No, but
watching.
you see, I'm glad you we are on this particular wicket, because we're talking about the level of violence in the society. And people are protecting themselves because of the level of violence in the society. And people want guns because they want to protect themselves, and with guns they will maim someone or inflict injury. They will kill someone. That is violence. And so you can see that the culture of violence is growing in the society, where Christians believe that they should be armed. So we are speaking to heightening the level of violence in the country, because guns can only do one thing.
It could scare you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could scare you.
You can be killed or maimed by a gun. And so when people talk about guns and the use of a gun, that in itself has to be born in evil thought.
No,
I won't,
Mr.
no,
Jones.
Mr.
Oh,
Jones,
no,
I-
sir, man.
No,
You
I
can't
won't
say
say
that.
that
No,
it's
sir.
born in
No, sir.
evil thought.
Mr. Jones, if I was living in Texas right now, a state that has allowed you to carry arms, I would have multiple guns. That doesn't mean I'm evil.
Yes, but you are not in Texas.
No.
And Texas is considered to be one of the most violent
Wild, Wild
places
West.
in America. It's a part of the wild, wild west. Well, you're not in the wild, wild west.
well,
there was a time in our country when policemen didn't carry guns.
No, sir. There's a bill in a whistle.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir.
But we now have Christians who are advocating that they arm themselves.
So they're not evil because they want to protect their family, Mr. Jones?
No. I'm not saying that they are evil, but evil comes out of that. If you have a gun, the only intention is to harm someone
Not
who
always.
is coming to you.
No, you have the right to protect. A man protecting himself is not called violence.
A man is not.
A man who's protecting himself is not referred to as a violent man. He is not going out there and creating havoc. He's in his home, his sanctuary, and it was invaded by somebody else who has a gun, who's going to rape your child, who's going to probably tie you up and kill you. And like Rev say right here, we're not going to stand there and sing Kumbaya. If you, Mr. Jones, if you come into my house at night and I'm home with my wife and my family, that robber has a problem. I can tell you that right now. And I'm there on national TV. I will protect my home. I will protect my family by all means.
But all I'm saying to you is there are thousands of people who agree with you, right? But I'm saying to you that what you are saying, you have to put that in a context. And that context is that we are living in a violent society.
We are living in a violent society, and we're dealing with...
And for citizens to protect themselves using guns, that in itself is a part of the violence in the society.
Well, you could, if you want to say it's a part of the violence, but you can get dogs. You
It's
can get trained dogs.
It's a
Right.
response.
It's more expensive to get trained dogs than to get a firearm. I can tell you that right now. A trained dog going with $5,000 is $10,000.
No.
No, a real trained dog, yes, sir.
Well.
Yes, sir.
Well,
Yes, sir.
you know, there are various means. There you have alarm systems.
Alarm is just going to let you know.
You have camera systems, you have bars, you have all sorts
cameras
of
for evidence.
The truth be told, we are living in dangerous times.
Yes, and in a violent culture.
And even
Yes, sir.
Jesus Christ told his disciples.
But in a violent culture.
we do. And even Jesus told his disciples to be harmless as doves, but he told them to be as wise as a serpent. And so wisdom tells us that if somebody comes in to cause havoc on my family, and after I've gone through the measure of the idealistic measure of calling the police, waiting for them to find a car, to come to my house, my entire home could have been rampaged. And so this gun is not for me to use all helter-skelter, just shoot at people. The gun is there for protection, for what is my responsibility, which is my family.
When Peter used the sword, what did Jesus say? You see, you all like to quote scriptures now.
I know.
But when Peter used the sword, what did Jesus say to him?
Jesus told, when Peter used the sword, Jesus tell him put it up.
Put away the sword, right? He who lives by the sword.
Die by the sword.
Died by the sword,
Yeah,
right?
and that person came into your house will probably be dying by his own sword.
But I don't want to. I want to just emphasize the point that even though there are thousands of practicing Christians who believe, as you do, that they should be armed and have their ammunition with them, that there has to be a better way in developing a nation, a country, than arming our citizens, than our citizens arming themselves. We ought to have sensible policies and programs in the country so that the practicing Christian doesn't have to have a gun, doesn't have to go looking for a gun. Yes?
Then how we go back here, how we go back to leadership. And we go back to a country that sits there and votes individuals who discuss everything on the table except for what it is to protect their citizens. We vote those folks in, and we sit back and we glorify this. There's nothing on the table now except for what Minister Mitchell is doing right now. That's for, we have young men walking around creating havoc who are not strangers to the police. So we're failing at our legal system from the top. And no one in the country has a problem until now. You're bringing up now, we have to arm ourselves as a people, as a Christian nation. But every election, we're going to go there and we're going to drink our beer and put on our T-shirts and we're going to say, yeah, yeah, but no one is sitting and realizing, but we have a leadership issue.
Well, you see, I'm against I'm against arming yourselves, right?
Well,
as a so-called Christian nation, I'm against Christians going to the gun shop, buying a gun and 1,000 rounds of ammunition, saying that I'm protecting myself. I believe that Christians ought to be working, doing some other things, so that they do not have to go to the hardware store to buy guns.
Actually, one
When you
question,
say
Mr.
do
Jones.
other things, like what? When you say do other
I
things?
mean ministry, go into the community and
Okay.
work in our communities. Mr. Jones, listen,
Understood.
some of our communities...
Yes. And if church people were to be real witnesses and go into the highways and the byways
We should have less crime.
and the hedges, we'd have less crime. And you will not have to go to the hardware store to buy a 12-gauge shotgun.
Mr. Jones, I will say this. I'm going on record for saying this. Many of our communities are not lacking the gospel, Many of our communities reject the gospel. That's what we're having right now. Like I said,
But
listen, I'm not talking about 3 or 4 ministries out there in the trenches, We're talking about dozens and dozens of churches out there in the community, been in the community for years. A lot of these communities have rejected the gospel.
The question is why?
This is the times we live in. The Bible talk about these kind of times. This is not something new. We shouldn't be sitting back here stalled like, oh my God, we live in a lawless nation. No, it's called the end times.
Yes, but
So when a community rejects rejects the gospel, you know what happens? Death comes on your doorstep. And that's what's happening now in our communities. Families, parents, and children, adults are rejecting the gospel.
and so based on your rationale and how you are processing this, if you have sufficient people who are rejecting the gospel, then your society is doomed. Is that what you're saying?
No, all are not rejecting the gospel. So when the law has its due diligence to arrest an individual, we look and we say, hold on, if these young men are still creating havoc, then hey, maybe need to create a law that 3 strikes you out.
And when you say out, what do you mean?
Means simply your time to be in the community is no more.
And what does that mean?
That means you'll be incarcerated until death. You raped 3 times, if you have 3 criminal records on you and you're still out there creating problems, that's it. If we create a law like that, sir, listen to me, you wouldn't need no ankle bracelet. You wouldn't need none. Armed robbery, finish. They get a prison in Jamaica, Mr. Jones, where the only way you're going to eat, you got to go out there and go find food. That's how we need to make our prisons. Do we need to build another prison? Listen to me, Mr. Jones. We have some men and women in our community who have rejected and refused to be rehabilitated. I'm not asking you my opinion, sir. I am telling you. What do you do with a man who refused to be rehabilitated and who wants to continue to wreak havoc in our community? He should not be released in our community. If we can't hang, then hey, I'd rather feed a man in jail than have him out here continuing to rape, to rob, and to kill police. So what we need right here now, sir, we need leadership. That you notice a party could have not won an election without the church. Am I wrong, Mr. Jones?
I don't know what you mean.
No, sir. There was no way in our past that certain political parties could have won an election without the church being on their side. You know why? The church had a more unified body. If our ministry would stop operating like businesses, and we start to operate like ministries, ministering to others, get ourselves together, and now looking to go in the community to make a difference, listen to me, sir. Listen to me. The church alone can make a phone call and say, sir, listen to me. You need to govern this country accordingly.
You believe people are beyond rehabilitation?
Some.
People are beyond redemption?
No.
No,
but some folks have rejected.
No.
That's my wording now.
No, I'm asking you, do you believe that people
Anyone
are beyond rehabilitation or redemption?
No, sir. Anyone can be reached.
Well, fine.
Anybody can be reached.
Well, fine. Well, that is a contradiction. No. You're contradicting yourself.
No, anyone can be released. I mean, could be reached, but some are rejecting to be reached. I just sat down and talk to what they call a classified criminal today. I don't think you've talked to these ones here today, sir. This is a different breed. This ain't 1993, sir. This 2015. This is a new breed.
But the new breed, you still can reach them, DJ Counsellor.
You can reach anybody.
There has to be a method. There must be a methodology to reach those people who are incorrigible, who are hardened criminals. There has to be a way. And I don't believe that a human being is beyond redemption.
None of us want to believe anyone is beyond redemption.
And so you are saying that there are people who do not wish to be rehabilitated.
Yes, sir.
Even though you say that, there is a method by which you can bring about rehabilitation.
But I don't think you should release folks in a community who they're craving havoc on as an experiment and try to rehabilitate them. No, sir. Let them prove their rehabilitation in Foxhill. If you can't prove yourself in Foxhill, then you cannot come amongst our folks. Listen, Cuba's opening our gates. And listen, I don't know if you've been to Cuba before.
You want to build bigger jails, right?
I wouldn't say I want to build bigger jails. I want to say individuals who cannot govern themselves accordingly do not need to be in the public. Well, and we know who they are.
Well, why don't you speak to the level of rehabilitation and whether or not the rehabilitation services that we are now offering, whether they are effective. Whether people are really being rehabilitated in Fox Hill Prison. When you go there and you have 6, 7 fellas in one little room, whether or not you have a program of rehabilitation. Because what you are seeing in our country, DJ Counsellor, is people becoming hardened criminals when they go to prison.
Yeah.
Because of the situation that they find in prison. They do not have proper rehabilitation programs. And perhaps if there were proper rehabilitation programs, they would not leave prison as hardened criminals. I've spoken to many inmates who came on shows with me and who said that they learned how to do crimes when they went to prison.
We talking about men.
No.
Hold on, I'm in there for armed robbery, and I went in there to learn how to be a better armed robber. Something wrong with my head.
No,
I can't blame the system.
No, because you have placed them in a cell with 6 other armed robbers who told them how they did the crime and how they got there. And because they are not properly rehabilitated, you are not properly rehabilitated. When you listen to the other 6 who are in the cell, and you were in that cell with them for 4 or 5 years, and no rehabilitation, real rehabilitation is going on, you come out worse than you went in.
The prison is making strides. That's why it's not called a prison anymore.
Anyway.
It's called a rehabilitation center now.
Is it? But is it rehabilitating people?
They're making strides. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've met men and women who have gone through the prison. I've gone through programs. I've met some of the folks who are up there on a weekly basis. Yes, sir.
But
some men of leaving that prison, leaving there, finding jobs and becoming contributing in the society. Yes, sir.
But the recidivism rate is extremely high. The people who are returning to prison, it is extremely high. They come out and they go back.
Okay, then if you come out and go back too many times, you ain't come back no more. That's the kind of government we need.
You can't run,
No,
you can't run a country like
Mr.
that.
Chair, the thing is that we have to look at these systemic issues as well, because even before these young men become hardened criminals at 21, 22, they were probably caught with a joint at 14, 15, put on their record that this is what they were, and now they have a record, can't travel. When they go on a job, they have to be let go or released from the job when people find they have a record. And so this causes these young men to be frustrated, and so they have to eat, they have to feed their family, or they have to do whatever they do. And so we find this culture of, or this cycle, because from a young age, these young men's lives were taken away from them, because they threw them up, locked them away, and give them a record at age 14 and 15. And so for the next several years, they can't travel, they can't work. And so they are now led to this life of crime. So it's a systemic issue.
And they are angry.
And these are angry young men who don't see, and anytime you find anybody who has no clear path or vision to their future, they will then resort to whatever other means are necessary. Right. And so if you get these young men rehabilitated, or give them some sense of hope, some sense of encouragement, some sense of there's more to life than this, you will find that there could be a change.
Absolutely. Let's develop it. Let's take this final break on the program. We'll come right back.